My name is Patricia Holloway. I'm 36 years old. And this is the story of how my husband walked out with everything, leaving me in debt for his mistress, and how our 8-year-old son's quiet revenge made him collapse in the end. It was a Thursday morning. I remember because the sky was still stained pink with sunrise and the smell of burnt toast hung heavy in the air. I was standing in the kitchen holding a dish towel, when Caleb walked out of our bedroom dragging a black suitcase across the hardwood floor. His eyes never met mine. Instead, he stared at the ground like the wooden panels might offer an excuse for what he was about to do. "Where are you going?" I asked. My voice came out raspy, like I hadn't spoken in days. He didn't answer right away. His fingers clenched the suitcase handle so tightly, his knuckles turned bone white. He didn't need to say it. I already knew. The late nights, the perfume that wasn't mine on his shirt collars, the way his body tensed any time I touched him. I had known. But knowledge is different than reality. Watching the man I had loved for 12 years walk away from our family, that felt like being stabbed, slowly. "For who?" I whispered, though I already knew. He closed his eyes like a coward and exhaled. "Lana." The name landed like a slap. Lana. The intern. The one who giggled too much in meetings and wore skirts that clung to her thighs like saran wrap. Barely 25. All sunshine and silk hair. I had watched her trail behind him at office parties like a puppy looking for approval. And now, it seemed, she'd found her prize. I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that means anything good. It was dry, hollow. "I figured," I said. "But I hoped you wouldn't stoop that low." He flinched, barely, then turned away like my disappointment was too loud to face. "What about the house, Caleb? The loan? The mortgage we signed together, remember that night? You toasted with cheap wine, said we'd grow old on this porch. What happens to all that?" "I'll send money," he mumbled. "Every month." I stepped into his path, blocking the door. "You think a few $100 makes up for 12-hour shifts in the ER while I came home, cooked, cleaned, and raised Liam alone? You think money fixes abandonment?" He didn't answer. "Because what do cowards ever say?" "Then go," I whispered. "Take your bags. Take your excuses. Take your shadows." He didn't even close the door with force. He just walked out like he was leaving a hotel room, quiet, forgettable. The silence after the door clicked shut was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I stood in the middle of our living room, arms limp at my sides, unable to move. Everything felt haunted. The couch where we watched Liam take his first steps. The kitchen counter where I once bandaged Caleb's hand after he burned it cooking pasta. The scent of home was now rotting nostalgia. And then there was Liam. I found him sitting on the rug in the living room, building towers with colorful blocks. He looked up at me, his big brown eyes wide and worried. "Mom, are you crying?" I sat down beside him and pulled him into my arms. I couldn't tell him the full truth, not yet. But I told him enough. "Your dad's not going to be here anymore, baby. But I'm here. I promise. I'm not going anywhere." He didn't cry. He just clung to me tighter. And in that moment, I realized, I didn't have time to fall apart. I was the only parent Liam had now. If I broke, we'd both shatter. 2 weeks after Caleb left, I picked up my first night shift at St. Paul's Hospital. I'd always turned down night shifts before, for Liam's sake. But choice had left with my husband. Liam still had school, still needed lunch packed, still needed clean clothes. And I still needed a way to pay off a mortgage and utility bills on a nurse's salary. Every night, I kissed Liam's forehead while he slept, and every morning, I'd return just in time to pour cereal into a bowl, sit beside him with fake smiles, and pretend everything was fine. He never asked about Caleb. Not once. But the silence wrapped around him like a second skin. One morning, I found him sitting on the couch, dark circles under his eyes, clinging to the old stuffed bear he'd had since he was 3. "You stayed up all night?" I asked. He nodded without looking up. "I can't sleep when you're not home." That was the moment I broke. Not in front of him. I waited until I was in the bathroom, water running to drown the sound. Then I collapsed onto the tile floor, muffling sobs into my sleeve. It wasn't the betrayal that destroyed me. It was watching my child, my baby, quietly suffer while trying to be strong for me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg God to rewind time, to give me one more chance to make different choices. But instead, I stood up, wiped my face, and got ready for the next shift. The days blurred into each other, 2 hours of sleep, rush to cook, laundry, nap, back to work. I became a machine with no pause button. And Liam, he became a shadow of himself. Quiet. Withdrawn. Never complained. Which hurt even more. Then one evening, just as I was about to collapse from exhaustion, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Mrs. June, our next-door neighbor. We had never spoken much beyond hello. But this time, she held a bag of cookies and a look of deep concern. "I've seen you coming and going at strange hours," she said softly. Figured something wasn't right. And for some reason, I broke down and told her everything. Caleb. The debt. The mortgage. The night shifts. The exhaustion that made my knees ache. She listened. And then she did something no one else had done. She made tea. In my kitchen. Like she belonged there. "I was where you were once," she said. "My husband died when my son was 6. I worked nights at the call center. Every time I left for work, I'd worry if he was crying alone. But we made it." And then, with no fanfare, she offered something I didn't even realize I needed. "I can stay with Liam at night. You go save lives at the hospital. I'll hold things down here." I cried again. Not because I was weak. But because for the first time since Caleb walked out, someone saw me. From that night on, Mrs. June became the anchor Liam and I didn't know we needed. She read him stories, made soup, left little notes that said, "You slept great. Mom's amazing." And every morning, I came home to a house that didn't feel as cold anymore. But peace never lasts. Not when there are still buried secrets waiting to detonate. And the first explosion came on a quiet Saturday morning, when Liam looked up from his laptop with eyes brighter than I'd seen in weeks and said, "Mom, I did something to help you." What he said next would change everything. I stared at Liam, trying to smile, but something in his voice made my stomach clench. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I asked, crouching beside the table where he had his small school laptop open. He didn't look scared. He looked proud. "I found some stuff on Dad's old computer, the one he gave me to play games. There was a folder that didn't have a password. So I looked inside." I froze. Caleb had left behind one of his older laptops months ago. I'd assumed it was wiped clean. I only allowed Liam to use it offline, with some basic learning apps. I never thought twice about it. "What kind of stuff?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Liam turned the laptop toward me. The screen showed an email draft, already sent. I could feel my pulse thudding in my ears. I sent some of the files. From that folder, I found spreadsheets, documents with money and people's names. And emails with someone named Gerald, Dad's boss, right? My mouth went dry. "Sent them where?" Liam hesitated. "To some email addresses I found with legal in them. One said compliance at and another one was like whistle.tip something." I couldn't breathe. My knees buckled and I had to sit. "Liam, why would you do that?" His voice trembled now. "I saw you cry. All the time. And you got so skinny. You stopped smiling." I thought, if Dad lost his job, maybe he'd understand what he did. Maybe he'd come back. I looked at my son and felt like my heart had been scooped out with a dull spoon. "Oh, baby," I said, wrapping my arms around him. "You didn't do anything wrong. I know you were trying to help. But you don't understand what this might cause." I sat back, trying to keep my breathing steady. Caleb had always worked in corporate finance, managing accounts for private clients. If Liam had unknowingly leaked sensitive financial documents, and if any of them were incriminating, Caleb's entire career could be over. That night, I barely slept. My mind raced with images of Caleb's downfall, legal letters, courtrooms, news stories. I kept wondering, did I want this? Did I want him to pay? The answer wasn't simple. Caleb had betrayed me. He had abandoned Liam. But despite everything, he was still Liam's father. And Liam didn't need to grow up believing he had destroyed the man who left him. The next day, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Caleb. His voice sounded broken. "Abigail, it's me." "I know," I said flatly. "They fired me. Yesterday. The legal team said there was a breach, they're investigating. They didn't even let me clear my desk." Silence stretched between us. "Lana left," he added, after a moment. "As soon as she heard I was unemployed, she blocked me." I didn't say I was surprised. I didn't say I cared. I didn't even feel sorry. I just asked the only thing that mattered to me anymore. "Why are you calling?" He sighed, long and shaky. "I don't know. I guess. I have no one left. No job. No friends. No money. I thought maybe you'd at least talk to me." I glanced at Liam, sitting on the couch with a comic book in his lap, his face pale and tired. "I talked to you," I said. "For years. You just never listened." I hung up. 3 days later, an official email arrived. It was from the legal department of Caleb's former company. A formal notice confirming his termination due to ethical misconduct and data leakage, with an external audit pending. My hands shook so hard I had to reread it 3 times. I called Liam over. "We need to talk." He looked up at me, hesitant. "Is it about the email?" "Yeah," I said gently. "I need you to tell me exactly what you sent. Every file, every person. Do you remember?" He bit his lip, then ran to his room. When he returned, he held out a small notebook, frayed at the edges. I wrote it all down. Just in case. Page after page was filled with notes, email addresses, dates, even subject lines. My throat closed up as I read it. He had tracked everything. All from a place of love and pain. And in that moment, I realized just how much damage love could do when it was misdirected. That night, Caleb called again. He was crying. "Abigail, please. You have to help me. I might be charged. They said something about fraud, about client privacy. I didn't even do anything wrong." I closed my eyes, trying to steady my voice. "So you want me to protect you?" He hesitated. "I want you to help me get through this. For Liam's sake. For the sake of what we had. You left us, Caleb. For a woman who dropped you the moment your credit score tanked. You lied. You cheated. You abandoned your son. You don't get to ask for help now. I know I made a mistake." I cut him off. "A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. What you did was a choice. And now, you have to live with it." I hung up again. And this time, I didn't feel guilty. Later that night, I sat on the porch with Liam under a blanket. The stars were faint. The wind was cool. I looked over at him and said, "Your dad lost his job." He nodded slowly. "He texted me. What did he say? That I ruined his life. That if I really loved him, I wouldn't have done it. I pulled him into my arms. You didn't ruin anything. You're just a little boy who tried to protect his mom. But from now on, let me protect you. Okay? His voice cracked. I didn't mean to make things worse. I know. But the only way forward is to be better than the people who hurt us. We don't destroy. We rebuild. And that was the night I decided I was done surviving. I was going to start living. I started small. At first, it was just the extra consultation hours after my regular shifts. Dr. Chandler, a retired physician who used to mentor me back during my nursing school days, called out of the blue one afternoon. He still did occasional follow-ups with elderly patients on the west side of Tacoma, many of whom were too frail or too poor to visit hospitals. He knew I needed work. And he trusted me. Some of these folks just need someone who'll actually listen, he said. And you've always had that gift, Patricia. They don't want pills. They want to be seen. So I packed up my old gray canvas bag, stethoscope, gauze, thermometer, antiseptic, gloves, and walked the cracked sidewalks of neighborhoods most doctors didn't visit. The homes were small, many held together by decades of love and duct tape. But each patient welcomed me like I was family. Bless you, a woman whispered after I checked her blood pressure and refilled her oxygen tank. I ain't had someone treat me this gentle since my husband passed in '92. I didn't make much. Most paid what they could. Some offered only casseroles or hand-knit socks. But I accepted all of it, because it wasn't just money. It was healing. For them. And for me. Liam began to smile again. With Mrs. June watching over him in the evenings and me coming home just before dawn, our house finally had some rhythm. He started helping around the house again. One night, he surprised me with a note stuck to the fridge in wobbly handwriting. I made peanut butter sandwiches. Sleep. I got this. We were still on a tightrope, but it no longer felt like we were falling. Then one afternoon, Mrs. June showed up at my door holding a flyer and a cup of peppermint tea. You ever think about opening your own clinic? She asked. I blinked. I mean, sure, in my dreams. She slid the flyer across the table. There's an old laundromat on Maple Street. The owner's retiring. Says the plumbing's still good. The rent's low. Big windows, too. I laughed, partly from exhaustion and partly because it sounded too impossible to entertain. With what money, June? I barely cover bills. She sipped her tea, then set it down slowly. Maybe it's time you stop waiting for a door to open and start building your own. That night, I showed the flyer to Liam. He looked at it, then looked at me with eyes too wise for his age. You should do it. I smiled weakly. You think so? I know so. I'll help clean. I already know how to scrape paint. He said it like he was offering me the world. And somehow, in that quiet kitchen with nothing but a crumpled flyer and a 10-year-old boy full of hope, I made the decision that would change everything. I signed the lease. The laundromat was dusty and tired, but the morning sun made the walls glow. I spent weekends scraping off layers of grime, repainting walls, watching YouTube tutorials on how to install a basic sink and light fixtures. Liam worked beside me every step of the way, never once complaining. We didn't have fancy equipment. But we had a hand-me-down exam table from Dr. Chandler, a repurposed medicine cabinet from my friend Trish, and a broken stool we fixed with glue and love. I printed a little sign on my old printer and taped it to the window. Community care, pay what you can. And they came. First, a mother with a toddler who had an ear infection. Then an elderly man with swollen feet. A woman with a deep cough who couldn't afford a checkup. Some couldn't pay at all. Others offered baked goods or hand-woven potholders. I didn't mind. Every time someone walked through that door, I was reminded, I was more than the woman who was left behind. I was a healer. I was needed. One day, Liam walked into the clinic carrying an old cardboard box. "What's that?" I asked. "A donation," he said with a grin. "From the garage. I thought we could turn it into a first aid kit for the front." Inside were bandages, gauze, an unopened bottle of antiseptic, and a roll of tape. I pulled him into a hug, blinking back tears. My son was growing into a young man right before my eyes, kind, helpful, and brave. We were building a life again. Piece by piece. Word by word. Patient by patient. One evening, after treating a burn on a construction worker's hand, I stepped out onto the porch of my tiny clinic. The air smelled like summer. The sun dipped behind the buildings, painting the sky gold. I watched the street, people walking home, kids laughing on bicycles, the soft flicker of streetlights. Behind me, Liam swept the floor. The towel he had hung to dry sat in the corner, and the first aid box was neatly organized near the door. This was ours. It wasn't big. It wasn't rich. But it was real. That June, nearly a year after Caleb had walked out, I managed to send Liam to a 10-day summer camp. Arrowhead Lake, fresh air, forests, cabins, a break from everything that still lingered at home. He needed to be a kid again. I needed him to breathe without the weight of our past. The day he got on that bus, he turned and waved through the window. The light hit his face just right. And for the first time in what felt like years, he looked at peace. I returned home to the quiet hum of my little clinic. Cleaned the vase on the desk. Filed the patient records. Prepared the medicine drawer. No laughter. No Legos. No footsteps from the hall. It was quiet. But I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Later that week, the phone rang. It was the camp. My heart stuttered, but it wasn't bad news. "Just wanted to let you know," the counselor said. "Liam helped one of the boys after a hiking accident. Wrapped the wound better than some adults I've seen. He's calm, mature. Really seems to understand people." I smiled into the phone. Tears welled up again. Not of sadness, but of pride. Liam was healing, too. That night, I lit a single candle on the porch, sipped my tea, and whispered thank you into the breeze, for Mrs. June, for Dr. Chandler, for the strangers who believed in me. But mostly, for myself. Because I hadn't just survived Caleb's betrayal. I had built something stronger in its place. The day Liam came home from camp, I waited at the gate, a paper cup of cocoa in one hand and a tight knot of nerves in my chest. I didn't know what to expect. He'd been away for 10 days. Would he seem older? Would he resent me for sending him? Would he still be carrying the guilt of what had happened with Caleb? But when he stepped off that bus and ran into my arms, all those worries vanished. He squeezed me like he never wanted to let go, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like a mother who was enough. Later that evening, over a simple dinner of baked chicken and rice, he told me stories, of archery, of swimming in the lake, of a friend who could burp the alphabet. But what struck me most wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Calm. Light. Whole. And then, in a quiet moment, he looked at me and said, "Everyone at camp thought you were a doctor. I told them you didn't have a big clinic or fancy tools. But I told them you help people better than anyone." I smiled and sipped my tea. "I'm not a doctor, sweetheart. Just a nurse trying to do her best." He shook his head, adamant. "You're a healer. There's a difference." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat was too tight. All I could do was reach over and touch his hand, knowing that even if the world still carried shadows, we had light between us. But life has a way of circling back. It was a crisp Sunday afternoon when it happened. I'd just finished organizing the medicine shelf in the clinic when there was a knock at the door. I opened it, expecting a neighbor or perhaps another patient. But it was Dr. Chandler. In his arms was a worn wooden box. "Got room for this?" he asked, smiling that familiar warm smile. I opened the box and inside was an old brass stethoscope and a black and white photo, him, younger, standing in front of his own clinic 30 years ago. "This was the first stethoscope I ever used," he said softly. "And I think it belongs to someone who understands that healing is about more than just medicine." My hands trembled as I accepted the gift. "Dr. Chandler. I don't know what to say." He patted my shoulder. "You already did. With everything you've built here." That night, I placed the stethoscope in the cabinet behind my desk, next to the notes Liam had written me during the worst nights, reminders that even in the dark, we had each other. Then came the moment I didn't expect. Not that day. Not like that. Liam and I were walking through Lakeview Park, something we did often now, especially on slow weekends. The leaves had started to fall, golden and crisp underfoot. The lake shimmered in the distance. We walked in comfortable silence, sharing a scarf I had knit during slow clinic hours. That's when I saw him. Caleb. Sitting on a bench under a bare tree. Alone. He looked like a man who'd been hollowed out. His clothes were wrinkled. His hair graying and unkempt. The man who once stood over me with arrogance, who used to toss his business card like a trophy, was now hunched forward, hands limp over his knees, staring out at nothing. Liam noticed him too. I felt his hand tighten in mine. Caleb looked up. Our eyes met. There was no defiance. No anger. Just a vacant sorrow. He didn't stand. Didn't speak. Didn't even blink. He looked like someone who had lost the only map he ever trusted. I gave him a single nod. Not a greeting. Not a welcome. Just acknowledgement. Then I turned to Liam. "Ice cream?" He shrugged. "Sure." And we walked away. I didn't look back. Because I had nothing to reclaim. No apology would unbreak what he shattered. No remorse would rewrite the nights I cried in the bathroom or the mornings Liam sat alone at breakfast. Some pain doesn't need confrontation. It just needs distance. We stopped by the ice cream shop, sat on the steps of the clinic, and ate quietly as the street lights blinked on. I watched Liam, his feet swinging lightly, his face lit by the soft amber glow of the lamplight. And he asked, "Are you still mad at Dad?" I paused. "No," I said truthfully. "I'm not mad. I haven't forgotten. But I don't want to hold on to things that hurt me anymore." He leaned his head on my shoulder, nodding slowly. "Me neither." There, on those steps, I realized something powerful. Caleb had been part of our story, but he no longer got to write the ending. We were no longer healing from him. We were healing beyond him. The week after we saw Caleb in the park, I couldn't stop thinking about that empty look on his face. It didn't haunt me out of love or sympathy, it haunted me because I finally understood what it meant to see someone who had lost everything and knew they had no one else to blame. He hadn't just lost his job, his reputation, or his relationship. He'd lost the quiet dignity of being a father. And that doesn't get replaced by apologies or excuses. Still, I didn't speak of it again. Neither did Liam. Instead, we poured ourselves into the life we were building, one patient, one breath, one quiet evening at a time. The clinic kept growing. Slowly, gently. Word of mouth spread beyond our neighborhood. Someone's cousin from the next town came in for a sprained ankle. A former construction foreman stopped by for blood pressure meds. An older woman who sold pastries at the corner market started dropping off coupons after I helped her with her arthritis. And then one day, something unexpected happened. A sleek black car pulled up outside the clinic. Out stepped a woman in a tan blazer and patent heels, clearly not from our part of town. She walked in, glanced around at the modest walls and second-hand furniture, then smiled. "I'm looking for Patricia Holloway." That's me, I said cautiously, wiping my hands on a towel. She extended a card. Monica Reyes. I work with the Washington State Community Health Initiative. We've been hearing some things about your clinic. My stomach dropped. Bad things? No, she laughed. Quite the opposite. We just didn't think it existed. I blinked. What? You're not on the registry. No license for a formal facility. No filing for tax-exempt status. But you're seeing dozens of patients a week, and no one has anything bad to say. That's rare. I suddenly felt nervous. I don't have a receptionist. Or insurance systems. I'm not a full-service clinic. She nodded, then stepped forward. But you are saving people time, money, and in some cases, their lives. And we're offering a partnership. If you're willing to formalize this place, we can help you get licensed as a neighborhood care center. That comes with grants, supply programs, and referrals. I stared at her. Me? Grants? You're serious? I asked. She smiled wider. Very. But you'll need to take some steps. Fill out forms. Prove your patient logs. Pass a compliance check. I looked around my little two-room clinic, with Liam's handmade sign on the wall and Dr. Chandler's stethoscope in the cabinet. Okay, I said. I'll do it. The next few weeks were chaos. Forms. Files. Long hours. I updated my logs, cleaned every corner, took photos of the space, and even had to sit through a virtual workshop on nonprofit medical structure. Liam helped with every bit. You should hang your photo next to the desk, he told me one night as we scrubbed down the front door. Why? Because people need to know who helped them when no one else would. That was the night I let myself dream a little bigger. Not just about survival, but about legacy. Then one afternoon, as I was restocking gauze in the back cabinet, I heard the clinic door creak open. I turned. And everything inside me tensed. It was Caleb. He looked worse than the last time. Unshaven. Hollow. Like he hadn't eaten properly in days. Patricia, he said softly. I didn't move. This is a clinic. Do you need care? He hesitated. No. I mean, yes. But not that kind. I crossed my arms. Then you should leave. I didn't know where else to go. Not my problem. He stepped closer, hands out like surrender. Please. Just let me say something. 5 minutes. That's all. I didn't answer. But I didn't stop him either. He sat in the old metal chair across from my desk. It creaked under his weight. I've been sleeping in a friend's basement, he said. The investigation made the news. No one wants to hire me. Lana, she left the day the first article dropped. Blocked me on everything. I stared at him without sympathy. I know I messed up, he continued. Not just the job. You. Liam. I was selfish. I thought I deserved more than what I had. I thought being needed by someone young and impressed made me important again. I didn't say a word. I wanted him to sit in the weight of it. I didn't come here for forgiveness, he finally whispered. I just wanted to see if maybe you were okay. If Liam. He's fine, I cut in sharply. More than fine. He's strong. Kind. Smarter than you ever gave him credit for. He lowered his head. I figured. I don't hate you, Caleb, I said. But I don't owe you healing. You gave up that right when you chose ego over family. He looked up at me, tears welling. I have nothing left. You have your consequences, I replied. He nodded slowly. I guess I'll go then. He stood, turned to leave, then paused at the door. You made something beautiful here, he said. And I never deserved to be part of it. Then he walked out. I sat at the desk for a long time after, staring at the door, feeling nothing but stillness. That night, I didn't tell Liam that Caleb had come. There was no reason to. But I wrote a new sign to hang by the front window. This clinic was built on broken pieces, put back together with purpose. And I signed it. Patricia and Liam. Fall came fast that year. The air grew sharp. Leaves turned gold and fell in piles along the sidewalks. The clinic's windows fogged up in the mornings, and Liam started wearing the scarf I'd knitted him again. Our days moved with rhythm now, simple, predictable, full of meaning. More patients found their way to us. Some by referral. Others because they'd heard a story. A woman came in with a gash on her hand and told me her neighbor said, "Go to the little place by the old laundromat, the nurse there has magic in her hands." It wasn't magic, of course. It was just care. The kind people hadn't felt in years. The state grant came through around the same time. A small sum, just enough to buy new supplies, install a proper hand-washing sink, and repaint the front with an actual logo. I cried in the hallway after the inspector signed the approval paperwork. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something permanent. And Liam, my God, Liam, he grew into a little protector of that space. He'd wipe the front door every afternoon, greet patients with his quiet politeness, and even label file folders in his careful handwriting. I caught him once in the back room, drawing up a design for a bigger clinic, with Holloway Healing Center scribbled across the top. He was dreaming now. And that meant more to me than anything. Then, one quiet Thursday morning, I got an email. From Caleb. I hadn't heard from him since that day in the clinic. I considered deleting it. But I opened it anyway. Subject, for Liam. It was a short message. Patricia. I know I don't deserve a second chance. I don't expect forgiveness. But I've started therapy. I've taken a job delivering packages at night. I'm trying to be someone our son doesn't have to feel ashamed of. I would like to write him letters. Nothing more. Just to tell him who I was. And who I'm trying to become. If you ever think it's safe, you can tell him that. I won't bother you again. Caleb. I sat there for a long time. Reading it. Rereading it. Not because I wanted to give him redemption, but because I finally understood something. Redemption wasn't mine to give. And maybe it wasn't even his to claim. But the attempt, however broken, meant he was facing the mirror for the first time. That night, I didn't mention the email to Liam. Instead, I brought out something I hadn't touched in years, a photo album. The early days. The before. Come here, baby, I said. I want to show you something. We sat on the couch together as I flipped through the pages. There he was as a baby, chubby cheeks and all. Photos of Caleb holding him with cautious pride, of birthday cakes and messy hair, of snowmen built on weekends and footprints in the mud. He stared at them like they belonged to someone else. Do you miss him? I asked quietly. Liam didn't answer right away. Then, I don't know. And that was honest. I respected that. You don't have to decide anything right now, I said. Not how to feel. Not who to forgive. But just know, none of this was your fault. He nodded slowly, still staring at a photo of himself on Caleb's shoulders. I just wanted him to care. I know. He turned to me. But I don't want to be like him. You're not, I said firmly. You're already more. A few days later, I printed the email. I folded it gently, put it in a sealed envelope, and wrote "For when you're ready" on the front. I slid it into Liam's keepsake drawer, next to his comics and his old bear. One evening, we walked together down to the riverfront. It had become a little ritual, sunset walks where we shared things we didn't always know how to say in the daytime. Liam kicked a pebble down the path. Do you think Dad's sorry? I think he's trying to be. He nodded slowly. That doesn't fix things. No, I said. But maybe it helps him understand how bad they were. Silence again. Then he looked at me. You're not just a healer, he said. You're kind. Even when people don't deserve it. I smiled, heart aching and swelling all at once. That's because kindness isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs it. As we stood there, watching the orange sun sink into the water, I realized the chapter with Caleb wasn't over because of some dramatic confrontation or courtroom finale. It was over because it no longer defined us. Our life, our real life, was here. In the clinic. In those long, quiet walks. In the way Liam hugged me without needing a reason. In the patients who showed up with scrapes and stories. In the coffee Mrs. June still brought every Saturday morning. One night, while closing up the clinic, Liam pointed to the stethoscope Dr. Chandler had given me. You think you'll ever hang that up? He asked. I looked at it, tarnished, old, imperfect. No, I said. Some things you keep forever. Not because they still work. But because they remind you why you started. He nodded like he understood. And he did. Because healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from choosing not to become the person who hurt you. The first frost came early that year. I remember watching Liam scrape the windows of our little car with the side of his backpack, laughing like it was some great adventure. Our life had changed so much, but that simple joy, that innocence, still lived in him. And that meant everything. The clinic was busier than ever. I'd added a second chair, thanks to a donation from a retired dentist down the block. A small heater now buzzed under the exam table. Patients brought warm pastries in exchange for bandage checks. Local teachers began referring parents who couldn't afford co-pays. The pay what you can sign stayed taped to the glass, faded, but never replaced. One afternoon, Dr. Chandler returned. He stood quietly at the doorway for a long time, watching as I taught a young boy how to clean a scraped knee. You turned this place into something special, he said when I finally looked up. I smiled. I just listened when no one else would. He chuckled. That's what healing is. Listening before prescribing. You're doing it right. Before he left, he paused at the door. You ever think about expanding? Maybe training others? Someday, I said. Right now, this is enough. Because it was. The storm Caleb left behind had once threatened to drown me. But now, in its place stood a home, a clinic, a child growing stronger each day, and a woman who no longer needed validation to know her worth. One Saturday, I found Liam in the living room, kneeling beside the small drawer where I had placed Caleb's printed email weeks ago. He held the envelope in both hands, staring at it like it held a secret he wasn't sure he wanted to hear. You don't have to open it, I said gently. I know, he said. But I think I want to. I nodded, sat down beside him, and waited as he unfolded the page. He read it silently, then folded it again. Is it okay if I write back? My chest tightened. Of course. Whatever you want to say, say it. That night, Liam sat at the desk and wrote a letter. He didn't show me what he wrote. He sealed it, addressed it, and asked me to mail it for him. I did. The rest was out of my hands. Weeks passed. No reply came. Maybe there wouldn't be. But I didn't push. That chapter belonged to Liam now. Not me. December came with soft snow and gentle silence. The clinic stayed open through most of the holidays. Some people had no one else to turn to. Some just needed to sit, breathe, be seen. One afternoon, as I sat on the clinic porch sipping hot tea, Liam stepped outside and joined me. He was taller now. His coat fit a little tighter at the shoulders. His voice had taken on a deeper edge. But he still leaned into my side like that same little boy who once held a teddy bear tighter than words. "You ever think about what would have happened if Dad never left?" he asked. I stared out at the street, the pale sun glowing on the sidewalk. "All the time," I said. "But I think we would have survived. We just wouldn't have grown." He nodded slowly. "I don't hate him. I don't love him either. I think I just hope he figures it out, so he doesn't hurt anyone else." "That's more grace than most people can give," I whispered. He shrugged. "You gave it to him first. And maybe I had. But only after I gave it to myself." That spring, I planted flowers outside the clinic. Just a few marigolds, lavender, a stubborn rose bush that didn't take easily but eventually bloomed. Patients started calling the place the healing room. I never corrected them. The name fit. One day, Liam taped a new note to the inside wall. I hadn't noticed until I walked in after lunch. "This place saved my mom. Now it's saving other people too. She doesn't wear a cape. But she's the bravest person I know." I pressed a hand to my chest and stood there for a long time, reading it again and again. Because that was it. That was the real revenge, not ruin, not destruction, not bitterness. But peace. Growth. A quiet, undeniable legacy of love that no betrayal could erase. We never heard from Caleb again. Maybe Liam did. Maybe he chose to keep it to himself. I didn't ask. Some stories are better left in the hands of the ones who lived them. One afternoon, a woman came in holding her newborn. She was young, scared, and her coat was far too thin for the weather. "I heard you don't turn people away," she said. "I don't," I replied. She sat down, clutching the baby to her chest. "My mom kicked me out. I don't know what to do." I sat beside her. "The first thing you're going to do is breathe. Then we'll figure out the rest together." And as she exhaled, tears slipping down her cheeks, I realized something. I wasn't just healing from pain. I was now part of the healing for others. And that was more powerful than anything Caleb had ever taken from me. Thank you for listening to Patricia's story. In a world where betrayal can break even the strongest among us, this mother didn't just survive, she rebuilt everything from the rubble. Not for revenge, but for peace. Sometimes, real power isn't found in punishment. It's found in choosing to heal anyway. What would you have done in Patricia's shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more stories that speak louder than revenge.